y'all, my name is Jasmine Jones. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and you are now watching Black Girl, a Therapist in the Wild. And this is a little series I like to call Therapist Tips and Reviews, and we are reviewing Lovecraft Country, Episode 2, our Season 1, Episode 2, Whiteys on the Moon. That reminds me of that Doors song. What is it? Riders on the Moon. Whiteys on the Moon. And I'm drinking the rest of my Michelada from my previous Euphoria video, cause yeah. So this episode, the ending made me very happy. And we shall get to it. But we basically start off with Letty, Atticus, and his uncle in the house that they walked up to in the last episode. And his uncle is in a room that is full of books that are his favorite books, and he's reading all the books. And he's just super happy to be reading all these books. And then Letty's in a room full of all these different clothes and dresses. And she's just like super excited to be in this room full of all these different clothes and dresses. She doesn't know what to do with herself. She's trying on various different outfits. And Atticus is concerned. He's just looking out the window, walking around, pacing the room. Having flashbacks to the night before. Not really knowing how to respond to all this. He's still upset. He is upset about the mole people, vampire monsters from the night before. And so they all eventually come out of the room. I guess it's the afternoon. They got there in the morning, and now it's the afternoon. And they run, and they don't necessarily know what's going on. Atticus is set on finding his dad. His uncle and Letty are just kind of like, well, let's go along with things and see what we can do. Let's not make waves yet. And then they run into William runs into them. He is one of the people that are there at the house. Apparently the house is a lodge. And William basically is telling them that there's a dinner tonight, and Atticus and his uncle and Letty are invited to attend, and he's walking around the house telling them about the house, how it used to be a lodge, how it used to be owned by, I think it was Sebastian Braithwaite, or Titus Braithwaite, I think. That's the previous owner of the house, or something like that. And then there's a Sebastian Braithwaite, and then there's I think his name is Samuel Braithwaite, that's already there, that's hosting the dinner. Samuel. There you go. There, bitch. Damn. Samuel Braithwaite. He is already there at the house. He'll be hosting the dinner. I'm probably wrong about that. Feels wrong too, but I don't know. I'm just gonna go with Samuel. And he's just telling them the history of the house. He shows them this big painting on the wall of this guy in this like old-timey kind of robe get up. It looks almost like one of those Grandmaster KKK robes, but whatever. And then he shows them to breakfast. So they have breakfast for them. And right off the bat, Atticus is just questioning everything. He's just like, why are they being so welcoming? He's trying to ask where his dad is. And William's like, well, his dad left 2 days ago to go speak to some lawyer, and he doesn't know when he'll be back. He's only is aware of what he was told. And, so as soon as they get outside and William leaves, they're like, this is a lie. William's not telling us the truth. They're trying to keep us here and things like that. So they're automatically suspicious. And, at first I was just kind of like, I wanted to be like, well, why don't they just see what happens? You never know. But this is white people in the Jim Crow South. So we are automatically suspicious of white folks in the Jim Crow South, and no questions asked. So Atticus has the right to be suspicious. And it's understandable that he's suspicious, as we get further in the show. So they're sitting at the breakfast table. And Atticus is trying to figure things out. He wants to split up and try to find his dad and things like that. They asked William earlier if they could leave and walk around the town. William kind of hesitated a little bit, and then he was like, just be back before dinner. And so Atticus is trying to figure out why Letty and his uncle are just so chill and calm about everything. Letty's sitting down eating. His uncle's happy about the books in his room. He's like, well, what about the monsters from yesterday? Lo and behold, his uncle and Letty do not know about the monsters from yesterday. they have forgotten about the monsters from yesterday. So there's some memory loss here, and Atticus doesn't understand why. So he's trying to talk to his uncle and Letty, like, why don't you guys remember? And then his uncle is just like, shush, we're being watched. So somebody was at the window watching Atticus and Letty and his uncle. So they start walking towards the town. They walk past the garage. They walk past the car that his uncle drives. And the car is perfectly fine. The car was in an accident. Letty crashed that shit into the cabin. So Atticus is like, why is the car perfectly fine? William just randomly pops up out of nowhere. He goes, oh, well, it was parked by the bridge. And, it was just perfectly fine when I found it. It was some blood in the front seat. But, it was perfectly fine. So Atticus is like, this is bullshit. They're lying to us. And as they're walking into town, Letty and his uncle are just kind of asking, or Letty's asking his uncle, like, has he experienced shell shock? Like, why is he like talking about this stuff that didn't happen? Like, why don't we remember what happened yesterday and things like that? They're walking through this town. It's like it looks like some Amish type shit. Like, people walking around in clothes, old timey clothes, and Victorian era. Not necessarily Victorian. It's like peasants and stuff from the Victorian era and things like that type of clothes. And they're just looking around. It's nothing but white folks, of course. And Atticus hears the whistle that he heard the night before that stopped the vampire mole things. They have a name. I don't know what the name is. If y'all know what the name is, you can comment below. I love to see. I heard somebody say it, but it was like long, and I was like, I don't know. It's vampire moles, mole rats. Because it makes me think of Kim Possible. Imagine if the little naked mole rat on there looked like that. That would have been interesting. But anyways, Atticus just takes off. He's just like really angry and upset. And I can understand because he just saw giant monsters. And so, his aggression and his anger is justified and things like that. So he runs off to find the whistle, and they run after him. And it's this white woman with 2 dogs. And, Atticus is just yelling at her and stuff. And I'm just like, why is he being so bold in this town? Like, I guess maybe because he's so close to his dad and he's just kind of losing all sense as far as like where he's at and how he's surrounded by white folks and shit like that. Because in every other town, he was just like, just gonna keep the peace, just gonna be quiet, just gonna be chill. But then in this town, he's running around yelling at people and doing all this other stuff. So he runs into this white woman with the dogs and the whistle. And the white woman just is looking at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why are you in my face? His uncle and Letty are trying to get him. And he's like, no, tell me about the monsters from last night and what's in the tower. So there's this giant stone tower behind the lady. Like, it's huge. It's like some shit you would see like in England, like the Tower of England or some shit. And the woman's just like, oh, this is, well, she doesn't explain it first, well, does she? Yeah. So they ask her what the tower is. No. Uncle asks her to stop the dogs from barking. She's like, he's more dangerous than my dogs. And then the uncle's like, well, we're guests of the Braithwaites and shit. And then she stops the dogs from barking. And so she does this like hand signal to stop the dogs. And then they asked her what's in the tower. She opens the door. It's like a bunch of hanging dead animals. And then she starts talking about like black bears coming in and obviously she's talking about black people. She's like, and they're just not paying attention and they're sticking their nose where it doesn't belong. And, the blacks. So she's trying to make it seem like she's talking about black bears, but they know she's talking about black people. So they start walking back. It is getting to be dusk, evening. The sun is almost set. And Atticus is still just kind of in shock. He doesn't understand why, his uncle and Letty don't know about what happened the other night. And then all of a sudden, the monsters burst out of the ground again, going back to the tower. So they think that the white folks are lying to them. and that they're keeping his dad in the tower, so they have to figure out how to get into the tower to get his dad. And that's kind of what they're talking about as they're walking through the woods. And then as they're walking through the woods, Atticus' uncle starts talking about his mother, and starts talking about his mother told him something about her ancestors, and apparently her ancestor was a runaway slave, and she ran away from her master, you know, after the house caught on fire, and she was pregnant at the time. Her name was Hannah, and apparently earlier in the day William had told them that the lodge they were in was rebuilt because the old lodge had burned down, and that the guy that owned it, I think his name was Sebastian, or the original Braithwaite, whatever the fuck his name is, was always friendly to his workers. So apparently, you know, letting them know that he was a slave owner. So when they're in the forest at damn near nighttime, they kind of put two and two together, and like, oh, he said earlier that he's always, you know, kind to his workers. So they were just like to his slaves, basically. And so Hannah was, whatchamacallit's great grandmother, Atticus' great grandmother, or some shit like that, 1833 or some shit. And so she ran away from the original lodge that burned down, and Letty's just imagining her having to run through this forest, which is just looks scary and horrible. And so they're walking through the forest trying to think of a plan to get Atticus' dad out of the tower, because they fully believe he's in the tower. And then the monsters come popping up out the ground and, you know, trying to get at them again. Uncle, Letty, Atticus are freaking out, and then this white woman comes, and her name is Christina. She is, I believe, the daughter to Samuel, the new Braithwaite in the home, one of the Braithwaites, the one that is hosting the dinner and stuff like that. So she's the daughter to Samuel, and so she comes up on the horse, and she like blows the whistle that Atticus heard the other night, and she's like, what did she do? Oh, the animals, the mole rat things stop. They stop. And then and then out from the forest comes the dog lady, and she tells the dog lady to escort Atticus to the laboratory, and then escort the other two to their rooms. So Atticus follows, and he goes to the laboratory with Christina. I think he went with Christina, and then the dog lady took the other two to their rooms, because he ended up in the laboratory with Christina and Samuel, her dad. See, the names is tripping me up and shit. So he ends up in the laboratory with her dad, and her dad is getting cut open by one of them dudes in the hoods, and I think it's his liver that's being cut out. I think they cut out a piece of it, because, you know, your liver grows back. So I think they cut out a piece of his liver and then sewed him back up. And while he's doing that, we go to the uncle in his room, and the uncle is looking at the books on the shelves, and he sees one that looks, I don't know, I guess looks kind of weird or whatever. He pulls it out, and there's a secret passageway into the library, and on a table is the book about their little secret magic organization. And so the uncle sits and reads the book, and then we go back to Samuel and Atticus and Christina in the little organ room where he had his organs taken out. And he's just walking around fine, like he didn't just get cut open in 1950 South with no anesthesia. Like there's no such thing as infection. I hope this was after penicillin was found and antibiotics was created. But they got magic powers too on top of that. So there you go. Mm-hmm. So he's talking about how something about the Bible and feeling like the Bible is like fake and all sorts of shit. But he also thinks he's Adam, and he wants to find the Garden of Eden. So that's his goal right now, is to open the Garden of Eden and go inside that motherfucking. And he's telling Atticus this, and then he also says that he feels like he's Adam, basically. So he wants to like recreate, go into paradise, and recreate paradise and all sorts of dumb shit. And Atticus just looking at him like he's crazy. So then he's walking in the hallway with Christina, and Christina's like, you must have so many questions, blah blah blah. And Atticus thinks they're wizards, basically, like they're part of the KKK, and the KKK is actually using magic and things like that. And Christina's like, well, we're not a part of the KKK. The KKK is poor. That's what she said. But basically, they're racist. And he's like, well, I just want to find my dad. That's what I want. Where is my dad? And she's like, I can't give that to you. I can't tell you that. So then he's like, okay, well, can you give Letty and my uncle their memories back? So he thinks that it's a spell that they put on them to lose their memory, which it is. They're magicians. They do spells and magic and all this other stuff. So she takes the spell off of them. And they start screaming, and he can hear them screaming in their rooms. And he tries to like leave his room and go to them, but a force field is up. So we shoot over to Letty's room, and we see Atticus walk in, well, who we think is Atticus. And Atticus is like trying to comfort Letty and let her know that everything's gonna be okay. And Letty's talking about her mom and how her mom was like basically neglectful and would leave her at home alone for days, and left her home alone one time for a week, and how she was scared that her mom wouldn't come back. So that's the thing that's been going on with Letty and her siblings. So not necessarily caring for the fact that her mom died, because her mom basically neglected her and left her home alone and things like that. So that's why in the first episode she was just like, why are you keep telling me about that woman and stuff, when her brother was trying to like get mad at her for not going and visiting her mom and going to her funeral, and when he gave her money to do so. So Atticus is telling her that I will always be there for you, I'll never abandon you. And then they start kissing and all this other stuff. And then we go over to Atticus in his room, and he's doing Morse code on the door with his uncle, and he's telling his uncle in Morse code that they're wizards. And then all of a sudden there's this banging on his closet, and out jumps this Korean girl, and she's a soldier, and she starts fighting him, and he knows her. I don't know what the story is with this Korean girl. She was in his dream as that red covered woman. She called him on the phone, so we don't know yet, or he called her on the phone, or he called her on the phone in the last episode. So there's a story with him and this Korean girl. And so she jumps out the closet, and she starts beating his ass, and they're rolling around in the room, and he's telling her he doesn't want to fight her or whatever. So he has something going on with this Korean girl, and they use that against him. And then we go to the uncle, and the uncle's Atticus' mom appears to the uncle. So apparently the uncle was in love with Atticus' mom, and they start dancing and things like that. So then we switch off between Letty, Atticus, and his uncle, just rotating around to see how they're handling their hallucinations. So none of these people are real. And we go to this room, and all the white folks that came for the dinner are looking through these magical mirror things. Just like it's the show. The black people are entertaining us. We're doing fuck shit to them, and they're entertaining us and shit. And Christina's walking around with a little sad face because she probably feels slightly guilty about what's going on, but whatever. So how this shit ends, as far as the hallucination goes, is that Atticus ends up killing the Asian woman, and then that traumatizes him. He's sitting there crying on the floor because he had to kill her. Letty is telling fake Atticus to stop, because he's standing up with his shirt off. He about to take his pants off to have sex with her, and she's like, I don't want to have sex with you. And he's just standing there, and he pulls his pants down, and there's an actual snake. And one of the paintings that they were looking at earlier, there was I think it was the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, and Adam had a snake for a penis and all sorts of weird shit. And so Letty is screaming her head off at Atticus. I don't know how she defeated the fake Atticus. I think she just was able to just run out the room. It didn't show that. And then the uncle is telling Atticus' mom, the fake Atticus' mom, that she's not real, because she's trying to tell him about how when he was younger and he wished he had superpowers, and she was telling him that he could fly if he wanted to, and he just steps back and tells her, you're not real. So then she disappears, and then they all come out of the rooms, and Letty is shook. She's just like traumatized. She don't know what to do. She looking around. Atticus is shook. And the uncle is trying to rally them together. He's like, that's what they try to do. They try to make us crazy. They try to gaslight us. They're trying to make us look like fools. And we cannot look like fools in front of them, you know. And so, you know, he's reminding Letty that she's a bad bitch and stuff like that. The one that got in the car and drove them and kept them safe and things like that. So it's really interesting how they just kind of rally together in their trauma. Even in the racial trauma, they support each other and they rally together. And the racial trauma is, they're so used to it, that's why you don't see that extreme reaction. It's like how we get desensitized to seeing, you know, school shooters and shit like that. It's like it bothers us, but it's like we're numb at the same time. So with this is new. This is new. Like, there's monsters and magic and all sorts of random shit. So a lot of that shit's gonna just come out, you know. So the uncle is saying that talking about the book he found earlier, and that he found a secret, and he thinks that he knows how he can get over on them. So so William comes and tells him that it's dinner time and it's black tie and women aren't allowed. And so Letty has to eat on the veranda while all the men sit in their little room and eat together. So Atticus and his uncle go downstairs and have dinner. And Samuel gets up and basically does this whole speech like he's Jesus or some shit, and he's like, you know, we've all sacrificed, and I've sacrificed, and I just want to share a piece of myself. So that piece of liver or whatever the fuck organ that was that he got cut out of him earlier, he's serving it to everybody in the fucking room. And Atticus is looking at his uncle and telling him, don't eat that. Because, you know, it looks like, you know, like, I guess how liver would look if you eat liver from other animals. And so his uncle probably wouldn't have known if Atticus hadn't been there to see what the fuck that was. Them niggas is cannibals, you know, and so Atticus is like, don't eat that. And so him and his uncle don't eat it. And so his uncle then stands up and starts talking about, you know, secret organizations. His uncle's talking about how he was a Freemason and he knows a little bit about secret organizations. And, you know, he also knows about their secret organization because he read it in a book. I want to know who left the book for him. There was a book and there was a magnifying glass. And so I'm curious who left it. I think it was Christina, probably. And so he walks around the room and then he says that, you know, based off of what I read about your organization, if somebody is a direct descendant of the original Braithwaite dude that sucked all the original Braithwaite dude like sucked all the magic into his body. And so basically Atticus is a son of a son. And so he's like a direct descendant to him. So that means that, you know, everybody in that place has to listen to Atticus because that's the rule of the little organization and shit. So Atticus gets up and he tells everybody to leave except for Samuel. And everybody's just looking at him like, the fuck, why you telling me what to do, you nigger? They don't say that, but they give him that look like, you nigger. Like, okay. Then he says it again. And they get up and leave. I bet that felt pretty powerful. That was nice. And then, you know, Samuel walks up to Atticus and he's like, you know, yes, you are the son of the sun. And yes, the original dude made his body like a wellspring for power. But I'm just here to use your body as a wellspring. So he basically tells Atticus to not mistake useful for indispensable. So he's letting him know that he don't give a fuck about the rules. He's here to use his black body for something, and that's all he's here to do. And that's fucked up. And you know, that's what they do. You know, that's the experience of the black person, is being used, being experimented on, being, you know. So I mean, if you think of Sarah Bartman, you know, being put on display, being used, being ogled at and things like that, we have the ogling of them with these fake counterparts, and then we have the ogling of them as they walk into the room, and then we're using Atticus' body to be this magical funnel for the white folks and stuff. So I mean, it's par to the core. Go to the tower. They sneak out and go to the tower to find his dad. And basically his dad was locked in the tower, and his dad found a way to sneak out. And so they followed the hole that his dad dug and basically found him and got him in the car. And his dad is just like, why are you here? I haven't talked to you in 5 years. Why would you believe a letter that I wrote under duress? So the letter was written under duress. He didn't mean to write the letter. They made him write the letter to get Atticus to come and get him. And that's why there was a letter. And so Atticus was just looking at him like, wow, that's fucked up. You're my dad and all this shit. And you're acting like, fucked up when I'm trying to save you. Atticus' uncle, as they're driving towards the bridge, is talking about how this lodge, they have lodges set up all over the country. Like, this is not the only sector of this organization. And so they're driving on the bridge in the silver. So it's a Bentley that they're driving. It's an old Bentley, silver Bentley, and it belongs to Christina. And they're driving it on the bridge to get out. And then all of a sudden they hit a force field. So they put up a force field to keep them from leaving. And then, as they're getting out the car, like dazed and confused, Samuel and Christina are behind them. They get out their car and they shoot Letty, and then they tell Atticus who does he want to survive next, and then Samuel shoots someone else and we don't know who that person is. And we go to Atticus and he's getting like bathed by white women. I guess he's getting prepared for the ritual, and Christina comes in and just sits down in front of him and just ogles him. Just this ogling thing of black people and shit, like we're animals in a fucking zoo and our skin and our body is just up for you to do whatever the fuck you want to. It's just fucking gross. And he's sitting there like, and she's showing him like the mirror or whatever of his uncle Letty and his dad in their room. And he sees Letty. She comes back to life, and his uncle is laying on the bed shot. So he chose to shoot his uncle. And basically the deal is that if he goes through with the ritual and opens the Garden of Eden, then his uncle gets to survive. So that's the deal. Christina gives him a ring, and basically I guess she's hinting that the ring may do something to, put a fucking fuck up the whole situation, if he chooses to use the ring or whatever. So she's trying to fuck up the whole thing. I guess she feels bad because her dad and all of them are evil and shit like that. Then we go into the room and we find out that Atticus' uncle might actually be his dad. They're not sure. They said Montrose, the Atticus' dad, is saying that, oh, we settled this years ago and blah blah blah. And he's like, I know we settled it, but at the end of the day, if I die, then you're all he has. So Letty has gotten up. She's in shock. She's just like freaking out. She goes to the bathroom. She's trying to wash the blood off of her. She can't handle it. She sits on the floor. She's like holding her legs, rocking back and forth like this is too much for her. She saw monsters. She got shot in the stomach. She's seeing force fields in her car, crumpling on nothing. So it's a lot. It's a lot. On top of abject everyday racism. So we go to Atticus. He is in this room with these robed figures, and they're chanting. And as they're chanting, they put so apparently Whitey on the Moon is a poem, and they put that as kind of a narrative while the white folks chant. And I think it just has to do with being black bodies being used and white people doing all these scientific discoveries that don't benefit black people. Like, you're doing all these things but none of this stuff benefits me. That's basically the gist of the poem. And Atticus is standing in the center, and there's like this door and these lights, electrical things around him, and then this gold light comes out of him. And then as the light comes out, you can see the doors start to form, like plants and shit start growing around the door, and the house starts to shake. Letty, his uncle, and his dad decide to get up out of there as the house shakes. The door is unlocked and they can leave. And so they leave, and they're anxious because his dad could bleed. I mean, his uncle could bleed to death as they're leaving, but they're like, whatever, we're just going to do it. His uncle says, let's go. And then Atticus is, still in the whole get up the trance thing. And then as the door to Eden is forming, like, in the center is his ancestor Hannah, and she's pregnant, and she's just looking at him, and there's this like smile on her face. And then all of a sudden there's this blast, and all the white people turn to stone and ash, and they're dead. And it's beautiful. To me, that said, the magical powers are not for you. The magical powers are for us. You don't get the magic powers. They're not for you, bitch. They killed all them motherfucking racist bastards, and it was glorious. They turned to ash like Lot's wife when she looked back at Sodom and Gomorrah, or she turned to a pillar of salt. But if she touched the pillar of salt, it probably would have crumbled and shit. So you know what? It's the same thing. I said what I said, and including Samuel, he turns into like an ash statue, and then he gets crumpled by the falling building. And then Atticus, his ring during that time was turning black, and there was black stuff coming out of the ring and surrounding him. So I don't know what that was, because it didn't go towards the doorway. It just kind of surrounded part of him. So, the house is shaking, crumbling, and then the door kind of just to Eden just goes away. It disappears. And then Atticus's ancestor Hannah is still standing there, so she's trying to lead him out the house. So he follows her and runs after her, and as she gets to the front door, she turns around and smiles at him like all regally and shit, like a queen. And then he follows her and gets out the house. And so they go back to the car, or he goes outside, and there's Letty, his uncle, his dad, at the car. And Letty comes up to him, and she's just crying and looking at him, and he realizes that his uncle had died. He goes to the car, and his uncle is laying there dead. See, I knew he was gonna die. Like, I felt like it as soon as he told his wife that shit about, on our next trip we're gonna go such and such and such and such together. Like, bitch, no, you're about to die. That's foreshadowing. So I knew it was something. I was like, I feel like he's gonna die. Anyways, Atticus starts crying, and he says, I'm sorry, uncle. I'm sorry, uncle. And so that fucks with him a lot, because he was real, that like his uncle was basically his dad. He was the one that like had the same interests as him, comforted him. I mean, he could have been his dad. Who knew? Who knows? And then that was the end of the episode. As they showed the preview for the next episode, I really feel like it's about to be like, the show Supernatural with the brothers, and they're hunting like the werewolves and vampires, and it's a random story almost every episode and things like that with like a plot in the back. I feel like it's that. I feel like it's kind of like that, just based off of what the preview showed. I feel like this is going to be kind of like Supernatural, but in the Jim Crow era with black people, because they show these little kids and they have a Ouija board. They show Letty, she buys a house, and then magical shit is happening in the house, and scary shit is happening in the house. And then of course outside the house, the racist neighbors in the neighborhood are mad because she's black and she moving in, and trying to move her sister in, and all this other stupid shit. So I feel like it's gonna be just like random stories with a plot going in the background, but we'll see. Because when it first started, I was kind of still confused. Like, I was like, well, so what's happening? What is all this? I mean, should we trust these white people? Should we not trust these white people? How is this? What are we doing here? But I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I mean, did you guys expect the white folks to turn out to be the way that they did in the magical house? Did you expect? I kind of felt like, well, did you expect him to be a descendant of, the original slave owner and things, and be a conduit of magical power? I mean, I don't think I'm excited because I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know how this storyline is going to go. I feel like it's going to be something like Supernatural, but then at the same time, I don't. So give me some ideas. Let me know what you think. But I hope you like this review, and stay tuned for the last episode of I May Destroy You tomorrow. And then the last two, is it one more episode of P Valley? I think it is, or maybe two more. I don't know. But yeah, the shows that I've been reviewing is coming to an end, so I'm going to try to find some new stuff and then some old stuff. I did Euphoria, so I hope you like that. And yeah, comment down below, subscribe, share, like, all the things that gets me views and things, so that I can rise and be all up there in the YouTube space and all this stuff. I don't know. I'm like, I'm it's kind of weird, the idea of getting seen more, but at the same time it's kind of interesting. So I don't know how it'd be if I had more viewers. So I guess I'll just wait and see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review. Thank you for the ones that have subscribed. I'm like at 330 now. That's a lot of people to me. One person is a lot of people, because each person matters. Each person is an individual with their own individual thoughts. But so I think 330 is a lot to me. So, if it gets to be more, I don't know. I hope I don't get too many trolls or, negativity and stuff. But apparently you can like block off phrases and things like that. So I guess I would just start doing that and I don't respond to trolls. So if you say some shit I don't agree with, my silence means I said what I said. I have nothing else to say to you. So, yes. But I hope you enjoyed. Like I said that like 3 times. And stay tuned. Later days.